Welcome back, everybody. This is Rafa again with Mystic Times. Joining me is the beautiful Lindsey. I was going to say Lindsey Brown. I was just reading Lindsey Scharmyn. We have a great second part here. We're going to go deeper into radionics. So maybe we can, let me ask you this, okay? So radionics, as I understand it, now you added this thing that I didn't know about, like microchips or computer chips or chips. That's crazy. But I understand it kind of works with orgone energy or like emitting those kinds of energies. And so part one of the question is that, and part two is what's the difference, or is it everything the same? Orgone energy, chi, Kundalini, Reiki, the universal energy, it's all of that. I mean, I know in the end, everything is one or non-dual or whatever, but again, it's like we're in two perspectives at the same time. So from the first person perspective, you have matter and you have differences. So how different and how similar are those different energies? I understand that orgone energy has something more perhaps to do with Kundalini because of it being kind of more like a tantric or the energy of the orgasm is kind of where the name comes from. So I don't know, you can riff on that maybe.
Yeah, it is. It does get difficult because so many people are very, very attached to the differences, to the nuances, to the labels. And there's a good reason for that, right? Because there is the scientific sort of side of things is important. It is important. Again, we were just talking about discernment before we jumped over to this section of the discussion, and discernment requires you to sort of weigh and measure and know the differences and the nuance and all of that. So there's something to that that's beautiful. We're not in rejection of that, right? We love that. We need those things, right? We need the rational and the irrational. And so radionics is much more on that sort of rational side of things. Like we were talking about, everything has a specific frequency, everything has a specific energy it's emitting. It has an ability to receive certain frequencies and energies as well. And another way to look at that is that everything has information. And information is everywhere. And you can remove information from a field and you can add information to a field, right? You can balance information, you can change and transmute information in a field. So everything has a field, everything is information, everything is these frequencies. Radionics originally was called radionics because it used radio waves, right? Radio waves. And that's just one different wavelength, right? It's one sort of wavelength that carries information of all kinds in this sort of wave form, right? But another way of thinking of that is, well, so does everything else, right? I am transmitting all sorts of waveforms on the radio wavelength and all sorts of other wavelengths, right? And you are too. And we're also receiving information on all of those wavelengths.
Yeah, we even say radiation, you know, like from like a nuclear plant or X-rays or whatever. But all that radiation means is that it radiates. It's like it comes from a source and it goes out. Okay, everything does that. But then you have, I don't remember exactly, but alpha, beta, gamma radiation, X-ray, light, sound. And so I'm guessing that throughout that spectrum from infrared, ultraviolet, whatever, and throughout, and from, by the way, which as many people already know, the light that we do detect is very small compared to the entire spectrum. So I'm guessing maybe these other energies are somewhere along that spectrum, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, when you get down to it, all of these things are light. Everything is light. So and we say everything is vibrating and everything is light. And when it gets down to it, that's all anything is vibrating light. Right? The various levels of light and all that spectrum you just described. And so what is light? It's information. It is. And this is scientifically true. Again, you can go to the materialists and you can see them talking about these exact same things in much greater detail than we'll talk about here. Right? But that is, light is information. And this is why.
What else? Just one more thing, because we mentioned chance on the first part. The other day when I talked to him, I actually have him, let me see. No, it's not on well, the other day when I talked to him, one of the things he said, sound and light are the same thing. And so, okay, everything in the end is light. And then again, everything, the light is also sound, because that's one question that I remember I had once. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm going to do just a very small point that I was thinking, okay, what's the difference? You know, you say, okay, whatever hertz or whatever number of hertz, as in frequency, is the color red, for example. But then you say X, another number of hertz is a certain particular note of sound. And like, how is that connected? Okay, I understood, I investigated, I found that light, I think it's that it vibrates a lot faster. So it's millions or whatever times faster in the vibration. But also light is vibration. I think it was of the electromagnetic field, whereas sound is vibration of physical particles. I love all of this, but I'm not very good at repeating the kind of scientific facts, but it made sense to me at the moment. So you can kind of do a kind of multiplication and say, okay, so red is whatever tone, but all of it, again, it's connected. It's vibrations perhaps of different mediums, but again, it's radiation, it's vibration. So
right,
getting back to what you were saying, right? Everything is information.
Well, and when you get down, yeah. And when you get down to the smallest level, right, it all falls apart anyway. And you see that all of it was just light anyway. So even what we're calling matter and saying sound vibrates matter and, you know, light vibrates that you were really just saying the same thing. It's just on different levels of perspective or different levels of speed or dimension. Right. So it is all the same exact thing. Our ears are just attuned to accept the vibrations in a way that we can transmit it into things we call sound. Our eyes are just, you know, just zoned in on just receiving this certain type, so we can see the wavelengths and what we call light. Right. And that just is our sensory organs. But what is the actual stuff? It's all light, it's all information, and it's all vibrations. And this is actually ancient knowledge. You go to the Hermeticists or you go to the various, you know, Vedic texts and all these things, they're all saying the same thing that scientists have just finally figured out today, right? And again, we have all these words and all these ways of looking at it. So if you're a scientist, you look at it this way. If you're talking about, you know, what's the difference between this and that, then you'll talk about like the electromagnetic or the physical, as, you know, as the vibration is happening. But when you get to another different perspective, you're like, oh, it's all just the same thing. It's just vibrations of information that are going out and coming in from various sources. So when you think about then in radionics that you can program this, right? You can say, well, I want this specific outcome. So I'm going to take this specific receiver called Lindsey. I'm going to measure her wavelength, and I'm going to transmit this thing that I already know the wavelength of, let's say aspirin, the medicine aspirin. So I'm going to transmit aspirin to Lindsey, and that's going to make her headache go away. And that works, right? That is what you can do with radionics. But you also don't need a radionics machine to do that. That is one of thousands of ways to do that. And using orgone energy and your intention and various materials is another way of doing that. Magic is another way of doing that. Going to the doctor and taking an aspirin is another way of doing that. So there's all these different ways. So people will say things like, well, you have to do it this way because, especially people who are very attached to their profession or their background, right? The doctor will say, oh, you have to take an asprin. And the radionics person will say, well, you have to do the radionics, you have to program this IDF machine and send this transmission. And the Reiki person will say, well, you have to do this and that, right?
That's crazy how orthodox we tend to become on the one thing, and we always forget that it's all the same, man. Oh. Okay, your thing isn't invaluable if it's not the only thing. It's just as valuable as everything else, and even sometimes it's the best option. So it's okay.
Yeah. And the herbalist will say, no, you have to actually scrape this bark off and mix it with the thing and then take that. And they're all right. All of them are right. Right. I had someone I was working with recently, and she was saying, like, should I work with this other spiritual practitioners that do my guides think I should? And her guides were saying, yeah, you should. She's going to give you a lot of stuff that's not true for you. but it'll be good for you to see how the thing that is true for you is also true for someone else from a different perspective, and that you're both heading towards and talking about the same things. And I was like, that's a really good job, guides, right? Like, that's a really cool, that's true. People will ask me all the time, like, should I do this or should I do that? Should I do tarot or should I do like this? I'm like, I mean, why not do both, or just pick the one that feels better to you, because there's none that's better than another, right? I'm doing tarot for people. I'm very aware that I could also be doing a guidance session for them, and the exact same messages will come through, but just in a different way. But some people just trust tarot more, or they just like it better, or they trust their guides' messages coming through more, or like it better. And they're the same. They're the same thing is going to come for you, right? Either way, whatever you're asking for, you're going to receive. So, but to go back to this idea of programming things, right? And that you can do this from all sorts of directions, the physical, the spiritual, the mental, the whatever, any level of being you can program through this really cool device you have in your brain physically, which is called the pineal gland, right? Which has this amazing potential to be a transceiver of light and information. And it is the only thing in your body that produces light. It is a transceiver. You can send light, therefore information out, and you can also receive all types of radiation, information, and waveforms. That little tiny bit of you is so powerful for this reason, because it is your maximum, IDF internal machine / orgone generator. Orgone is just another word for the cosmic energy, right? You said kundalini and orgasm. Those are other words of access points for this energy. Prana is another word, an access point for this energy. Spirit is another word, an access. Soul, chi, right, is another one. We could go on and on. All of these are just words for the same exact thing, which is just this eternal light that is information, period. And you have the transceiver for it. It's inside of you.
Yeah, so many questions come up, I guess, for me and for people. Like, we look at the differences, and it's kind of hard sometimes to integrate them and see how they are the same, or like it feels like there's this like central body of water, for example, and many rivers come out or come in, or I don't know exactly how that would work. And sometimes, for me personally, I'm very interested in like looking at, okay, what about that connection when the thing connects with the river, connects with the ocean, what's the qualities of that connection, and how is that connection different from the connections of the other rivers, being that I know that they are all one and the same. So I guess like fractally, the connection of one river is a reflection, the qualities of that connection would be a reflection, kind of distorted or changed a little bit, or of the other connections. And now the image of the jeweled net of Indra comes up, right? About it. Yeah. So sometimes because of trying to understand that, how the difference is similarity, I kind of get in my head and start asking questions that kind of make no sense, because I don't know why they wouldn't make any sense, but I feel like I kind of get stuck in like questions, because it's something that's deep in my soul, is that I'm trying to find the question, and when I start looking at these things, I see that there is similarity between all the things, and so I'm like trying to get like the common denominator in maths, like the one number that can divide all of them, or that can represent all of them, and it's impossible actually. It's like it's not a number. It's like the full, outside of the system, but at the same time inside of it, and giving it birth, even perhaps. It's like I'm trying to find the material cause that I know is not material, but I'm trying to find like the closest I can get. And I guess it's, again, thinking of math, like, limits. It's like you get closer and closer, but then it starts closer and it never touches, but you're always you continue walking the thing and trying, but when does it cross? It's not gonna cross. but at the same time, that not crossing is a way of crossing it. So it's like that paradox. Yeah, it's paradox. That's the thing. I need to get more accepting of the paradox of existence, because nothing makes sense, and at the same time, that is why it does make sense, right? It's so fantastic.
And you can look at, like you said, any one thing, and you can find all of the things reflected in the one thing eventually, the longer you look at it. So it's not bad to ever be looking for those definitive and those specific and those like broken down. That level of discernment is never a waste of time or a negative thing, because it always, like you said, leads you back when you swim far enough up that river to the ocean and the whole source, and you go, oh wow, I came here again anyways. It was either Buckminster Fuller or Richard Feynman, one of those great, brilliant minds, said exactly that, right? If you knew everything there was about one thing, you would know everything there was. Because it's all reflected like that fractal. That is the truth of the fractal, is that everything isn't everything. That's the truth of the hologram, is that everything isn't everything. And that's the truth of saying everything is everything, is that everything is in everything. Right?
And the language itself makes sense. If you knew everything about one thing, you would know everything, because everything is one thing.
Right. And that also, one of the many ways we describe source or God, for me at least, one of my favorite ways, is the unknowable unknown. Right? That's that line. You're never going to cross it. It's the unknowable unknown. If you knew it, you would be it. And then you would no longer have this perspective and the need to even ask the question or come to the conclusion or whatever, because you are the conclusion already. Right? And everything just is nothing almost. Right? And that unknowable unknown is everything.
Yeah, you remind me of this phrase: that which you are looking for is already where you are looking from. And
I love that.
Yeah, again, the paradox. I don't remember exactly who said that one. You
know it more and more. You know it more and more, and then you are it more and more. And then and this is also that process we were talking about, where every moment actually matters along the way, because you cannot become it and be it until you are like peeling away all the things that are not it along the way, or the things that are so it but never cross the line. Right? You're always getting more and more in touch with that, because like you said too, you do know it, you understand it perfectly inside. There is no language that can contain it or express it. So you just get better and better at understanding it, understanding it, perhaps, like, right, internally, and just accepting that is true.
And so trying to describe the whole thing with just half the things is like a fool's errand again, right? It's not something that you can do, but it's something that is the challenge. Is okay, try to and play this game of hide and seek, where you are constantly looking outside for the person hiding, and it's actually yourself who is hiding, dressed up as the guy that's looking, and eventually through I like this the spiral, right? Through the spiral, you come back to the same place with a different understanding, with more experience in your backpack or in your being, and you can see the same point with new eyes, and therefore extract new information and new knowledge from it that was already there the first time or the previous time, but you just weren't ready. And so you see that growth. It's like there's this one thing that it feels kind of like fixed and solid and already complete, let's say, and you're like spinning around it as like a point of it, and you evolve. The thing doesn't evolve, but at the same time it does evolve through your evolution. It's like already complete and at the same time in process. It's so beautiful.
Yes.
Oh my God. And for some reason we are not in this state of always having this clarity about it all the time, I guess, because that is part of the evolution. But how beautiful it would be to be like on LSD all the time. Maybe not on too much LSD, but on this, this removing of the filters, which for me it was that was the one main thing I got many things from my interactions with LSD when I was younger. And one of the main things was that thing about the mind having filters. That was like such a revelation, and you know, just it wasn't told to me. I just had the experience of the filters falling off or opening up, and realizing, oh my God, I have this thing all the time, and now it's not present. Wow. And then the trip ends, and they come back a little bit different, because now you've gone across the spiral and you have something new. And with radionics, for example, to bring it back to the thing, for me, before, many years ago, I had heard about it, but it felt like crazy. It's like, oh, so intention, which is something that has no value, according to me at the time, you're going to use a physical thing to transmit this energy, which is ridiculous. You're not going to accomplish anything, because only the material thing is real and the other thing has no value, is what I felt or thought at the time. But slowly the two things have started to come together, and now I can finally see and recognize, wow, how incredible that we can actually move and project and work with this energy in such a precise and materialistic way. It's like, that's why I think radionics is so important for the future of humanity, because of how it feels to be like in the point of the connection between the river and the ocean, kind of like, okay, do this thing in the physical world, and kind of like clockwork, it helps the spiritual or the irrational side. But again, like you said, it's not like, okay, I have no more fear of the moth, but there has been a shift in my energy. And that shift was scientific, let's say, or what's the thing, the word with scientists, they need to predict. It was predictable, kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe not the quality of it, but that there would be an effect, it was predictable, right? Or can you predict the quality a little bit?
You should be able to, and that's the work of any good radionics practitioner, IDF practitioner, is to narrow down more and more exactly like which frequencies and which doses for how long, and you know, maybe even on what times of day or astrological energies, and you know, that gets really, really specific, and then it gets more and more predictable the further you go. A part of that, or any other tool we're using, Orgone, right, which is a very specific, I make Orgone devices for people to gather the Orgone they already have and use their intention and whatever to create their reality. IDF is also just as specifically brought together with this intention to create a certain reality. And even when you were talking about, you know, LSD and doing acid when you were younger, you maybe also had the experience, I did at least, because I was accidentally and without having this terminology, the trip mother constantly. Not because people said Lindsey's going to be the trip mother, not because they even knew they needed one, but because I was
the trip dad. Yeah.
Yeah, because you had the perspective of those filters. So you understood if somebody was going too far in one direction, either towards mania or depression or fear or whatever, that all you had to do was put a new filter in front of them. But it has the same components as what you would need to use in IDF or in Orgone creation or in magic or in any of these other modalities, which is that you had the intention. I'm going to go make that person have a good trip, right? And then you have the belief that you can. I know I can do that. Then you have the emotion of it. You're coming up to them with the emotion of the good energy you want to give them. And then you're acting it out somehow, right? It could be a million different ways of what the action is that you do. Maybe it's that you wave your hand in front of their face and go, you know, get happy, or who knows what it is.
For me, you know, it was, I would just look at a person's eyes and I would say, yes, that. And they would be like, and they start laughing because you're talking about. Yeah.
Because you're just transmitting it into them, right? So there's always those same components though, no matter which modality you're looking at. And it's the clarity of your intention. It's the level of belief you have that it is going to work, which in science, that belief is developed with repetition and predictability, right? And then now you have this belief in it, this is going to work. I'm going to look at this particle and it's going to be a wave. I'm going to look at this particle and it's going to be a particle, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, or I'm going to take this pill, which is actually nothing, just sugar, but the placebo is
and it's going to work. Yeah. You have this belief, and then you have this energy of your emotion and connection with it too, right? If your emotion is off, or your belief is off, or your intention isn't very clear, all of these things start to fall apart. But if they're all in perfect alignment with each other, and then you put them into an action, you have now performed reality creation, and you've done it on any level you choose. You can do it with anything. It's the same with gardening, right? I'm going to make this garden. It's going to look like this. I'm going to use these seeds. I believe that I can do that. I know I can do that. I'm going to do this with hope and with confidence as my emotion, right? And then I'm going to act on, I'm going to plant the seeds in the soil. Oh, look, I made a garden. It's all levels. It doesn't have to be woo-woo or spiritual or weird or whatever. It can be very practical, but they're all the same process and they all require the same components.
Yeah. And recently, I don't know, maybe we can kind of start wrapping up the radionic thing, but again, everything is connected to everything. I was recently, I don't know if you know about this book called the Reality Transurfing.
No.
Oh, it's beautiful. So I was listening to an audiobook of that, and he was talking about this thing of opening your hand, right? Like, how do you do it? And I don't remember exactly the explanation he gives, but the basic element was intention in his explanation. And that's the same place that you're kind of starting from, right? And it's like, nobody knows how we do it, but
yeah.
Again, if I put it through this filter that you're offering, intention, belief, emotion, and action, yeah. And he talks about the same thing. It's not just, okay, the intention. I think he calls it the will to have and act is how he defines it, or something similar. And it's the intention, but then it's also the belief. And it all happens like simultaneously almost, or absolutely. It's the belief that you will be able to open it. And then is the emotion. I don't know how to necessarily connect it so much in this case, but finally it's the action of actually, go ahead and open it. It's not just stay in the intention, because then nothing's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, the way you could think about the emotion of it is also just the energy field of it. So with something like that, the energy field of it is so, you might say, calm and balanced or present or whatever. It's like we just open our hand, we just know that. But if you're let's say like very depressed or agitated, you might actually have problems opening your hand, even because your body is now reacting to this negative emotional field you're creating. So something like that that's so sort of ingrained and automatic, it's harder to identify, but you can at least see the negative the emotions that might stop it, and then you can sort of understand that the emotion is still a part of it.
And you know what else? He says how, like, we don't, for example, in this example of the hand, no, it's not that we open the hand, but it's actually that kind of, I guess, this feminine aspect of us, or the quantum field or whatever. We actually move our consciousness or our focus to the point of he calls them like the field of alternatives or something like that, or of variations. We move to the place, to different spots where the hand is already in each of the points of opening. And so it's not that you open your hand, it's actually that you, in a way, you kind of move to another body that has the hand a little bit more open, and so forth. And in that way, that is, if you think of it, doing this is reality creation, but it's, again, we've practiced it so many times for so many decades and years that for us is, I open this hand, but it's actually not the same hand, the one that opens up, as the one that was closed and where you had the intention. But it's so hard to activate that perspective and keep it. Again, it's got to be habit and practice. But then, if you know that what you're doing here is the same thing that's required to create anything around you, or to move to the place or to the variations where your intention is already manifest in the 3D world, then okay, this is a new perspective of how to work with it. It's not that I have to make this like effort and fight, and it's more like I just need to believe and intend that I am already in the place where my dream is already true. And well, I've never heard of myself thinking it that way. So yeah, thank you for helping me like connect several things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
know. Yeah.
I know I have to go, so maybe this can be the final sort of thought, but a couple things about what you were just talking about. And one is the practice aspect of it, right? Like you said, the hand opening is so common. We've been doing that since we were born. We haven't maybe perhaps always been creating miracles for ourselves or creating the reality exactly as we choose. And especially not on the highest level where we think, well, the whole world is also doing this. And it's like, I can't stop everyone else from doing what they're going to do. And so especially not on that level. So there's all these levels of sort of manifestation and reality creation we're not practiced at. That doesn't mean that we can't do that, right? It means that we practice it more and more. And so one of the ways to practice that more and more is by thinking of it as sort of instead of like, I'm creating this reality, I'm going to keep focusing on it and just feeling it and then why isn't it happening? But to also imagine it as like you continuously are releasing what is not that. When you opened your hand, you released the idea that your hand was closed. So easily. You weren't attached to it at all. It wasn't even a thought. You can always go back to your hand being closed, right? So you just released that and you opened your hand. There's no part of you that even slightly resisted it at all, right? It would have if there was a fire that your fingers would have gone into when it opened. It would have been like, no, I'm not doing that, right? So we have resistance for a reason, but we can practice releasing that resistance. And part of that is even just the belief part of it, right? Do you actually believe that, you could be a millionaire tomorrow? Maybe you have, no, there's no part of my life. There's no way I could be a billionaire tomorrow. Okay, but do you believe you could have like $500 more by tomorrow? Yes, I can believe that. Okay, cool. Well, then start there, right? And then eventually, once you start getting $500 daily of over and over and over again, then you're like, okay, well then, yeah, if I could do that, maybe I can get $1,000 a day. Maybe I can get $1 million a month. I'm not even saying, I just like the money option because it's so easy for people to disbelieve it, that you can play with your own disbelief more easily, right? Maybe you start with like, I'm going to find $1 somewhere that I didn't expect or something, right? I'm going to receive just an amount of money that I didn't expect necessarily, or whatever. You could be anything. You could do it with hummingbirds. I'm going to see 3 hummingbirds today. It's not actually as good to put numbers on it, but those types of things you can start playing with and practicing the release of the things that resist those possibilities you're inviting yourself to be in deeper connection with, because that is that component that I think is most often limiting us, is our belief. But when you get down to it, if you understand all the things we've been talking about in this show, you understand that every single possibility already exists, because the all is all. And so do you want to be in the reality where your hand is open? Well, then do it. And if not, don't. But it's all up to you, and to practice heading towards anything you dream, including a global scale of being that many people have a harder time believing they can affect.
Yes, definitely. This is the new age, the age of Aquarius or whatever, the new paradigm, because it so much has this I'm going to continue calling it the guide's perspective, that thing of looking at the one thing from a totally new perspective. So instead of you open your hand, it's actually you move to somewhere which is not a place, but it kind of is. You move to a state or to a reality where the hand is open. It's like looking at it so differently. And yeah, with practice, you start having confirmations for yourself, which will most likely be kind of symbolic or meaningful or synchronistic. The confirmations, it's not so much like the scientist who looks for an outside confirmation that is objective, but it will be very subjective. Maybe, well, I don't want to go into maybes because it could be eternal, but you start getting through practice confirmations that tell you through your filters, through your, it's even more incredible than physical science, because it's, wow, I got the confirmation that I specifically needed. It's not a confirmation that could be general, but it's a very specific confirmation that only works with me. So it's like there is something that is communicating with me, and it turns out it's myself. That's why it knew what to communicate and what symbols to use. Lindsey Scharmyn, this was great. I really loved meeting you. I knew we would have a great time. I had a great time. I hope you did too. And I hope you guys watching or listening did as well have a good time, and you got something valuable out of this, and that helped you guys learn more about yourselves, know more who you are, what you want to experience in your life, how to do it. And that is one of my intentions for this new season of the show. I've been doing it for 3 years already. And I'm, again, this Aquarian thing that I always go off the tangents and a million different thoughts and whatever. I love doing that, but I also want to bring it more to the how, to the techniques and practical pointings that can, because there's like enough information that you can have, and you don't need to know any more information, because the information can help you maybe develop a belief, but then it's just mental masturbation or just shoving more information onto the backpack, and it only weighs more because you have more questions that start to make you doubt things. And once the belief that you can create your reality, for example, in this case, once that is kind of established in and balanced or whatever in you, once you have enough info of that, then the next valid question is, well, okay, how do I do it? And that is one of my main intention for this new season, is to bring people on and ask them more practical questions, rather than just philosophizing and going into the mystic realms, which is, again, also beautiful. So I really liked that with you, we were very able to go into this place of more practical things. And I really appreciate that you shared now at the end this how-to. And yeah, again, people, thank you guys for watching. You can find me on Instagram if you want to message me, @manrafa. And there's the Patreon, which you're probably on, or maybe not, because maybe this one went public. And you can find Lindsey on her links, which she's going to share right now.
Yes, thank you so much. It was a very good conversation. Thank you for inviting me and being able to go to all of those places in one conversation. I think that's very cool. And yeah, I invite people to come to rogueways.org to connect with me. You can contact me through there. You can set up one-on-one sessions with me. You can find the courses that I teach. You can get hooked up with the weekly meditations or the events that I put on. And you can also find the links to the show, Rogue Ways and Middle Path, as well. And so I hope to engage with you guys on all those fronts, and go grab the audiobook if you're into fiction. Very excited about that. It's on Audible right now. If you've never done Audible, you can sign up for free and get a free book. So you can go grab that one for free if you'd like. And so that's available, and all my books are also on my site if you want a hard copy from me with an inscription as well, which you don't get the inscription if you get it from Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, only if you buy it direct from me. So it's up to you which one you want. They're both good for me. And so thank you everybody also for being here with this conversation. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, look, I was one of my guests, which you should look into her. Her name is Betty Kovacs. Here she is. Betty Kovacs. This is one of her books. She sent 2 of her books to me, and you were just talking about the inscription. Look at this. This is beautiful.
Yes.
Just from our conversation here, you know, a beautiful link was developed, and she was so kind to send the 2 books. Oh. And these books are like amazing as well. But I'm definitely curious about yours, because I'm also trying to or writing a fiction book, but it's just a few scenes for the moment, and a few characters that are starting to to make meaning between each other. And yours has a very, very fun name. And I just wanted to share one final story that you reminded me, connected to what we were just speaking about: intention, belief, etc., and action, and emotion and action. There was this Buddhist monk, or Buddhist, I guess he was probably quite advanced in his practice, and he, for some reason, he was going to show a miracle to his students, or to the people of this town, and so he asked one of his students, okay, bring 5 people to show them the miracle. And he was about to do it, and before he started, he said, no, he has to go. And he was like, well, okay, no, the master says you have to go, okay, no. So they took that man away, and then this Buddhist monk pressed his hand against a rock and started to go into the rock, and made an impression of his hand into the rock. And then the people were amazed. And then when they asked him why he made the other guy go, it's because he said it's because that man didn't believe. That was his. So I guess he wasn't going to be able to do it with a man present, something like that.
If you look at real magicians who can actually change forms and reality and physical reality, they have the same exact process. They will sit there convincing the audience for an amount of time, and you can tell they're gauging until the audience is really engaged and has their full focus and really believes, and that's when they'll do the trick. It's the same with sleight of hand people who aren't doing real magic, because they need you to be focused on the thing while they do the other thing behind the scenes. But real magicians need that too. And when I am doing tarot readings, guidance sessions, healing ceremonies with anybody, I can also tell very easily how much they believe and how engaged they are in the process by how easy it is for me to get the messages through and share the information. It's so much easier with people who are engaged. It can still happen with people who are there in some form of doubt, but it's not as good for them or for me. So it's just not as good, right? Your belief has to be there, and the deeper your belief and expectation of success, the deeper success you'll have.
Yeah, that's so true. Let's close. But the thing with the magicians, what I realized is the sleight of hand guy, he's doing the trick. The real magician, both him and the audience are doing the trick. That's why they're different. Yeah, very good. So thank you, Lindsey. It was great meeting you, and I hope we can get together again very soon, and have a great rest of your week and a great day today. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye-bye.